The Cursed Book. More than 60 forbidden stories that YouTube wouldn't let the channel publish. Link in the comments. Buy it now. The job seemed simple enough on the surface, guarding an abandoned warehouse through the night. However, as he scanned the crumpled job ad, he noticed a peculiar line at the bottom. Read the rules before becoming a night watchman. He chuckled, dismissing it as a gimmick to add intrigue. Little did he know, those rules were his only hope of surviving the night. The first rule was straightforward. Never leave your post. He was stationed in the main hall, a cavernous space where shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. The rules had a way of embedding themselves in his mind, intensifying his paranoia. Every creak of the building felt like an omen. The second rule was cryptic. Do not follow the whispers. He initially thought it was a metaphor for avoiding distractions, but as the clock struck midnight, faint, mournful whispers began to drift through the air. They seemed to call his name, promising secrets hidden within the walls. By 2 a.m. the whispers grew louder. They wove through the darkness like a sinister symphony, drawing him toward a particular corner of the warehouse. His feet felt as if they were moving of their own accord, despite his efforts to resist. The whispers beckoned with an irresistible allure. The third rule was an ominous one. Beware the shadows that move. The rules had been posted on a wall, barely visible in the dim light. He had dismissed it as a superstition. But now, as he watched the shadows twist and curl in unnatural ways, he realized that the rule was not mere folklore. Shadows slithered along the floor, their forms shifting and elongating as if alive. Every so often, they seemed to reach out with spectral fingers, touching the edges of his uniform. The sensation was cold and clammy, a harbinger of the supernatural forces at play. The fourth rule was perhaps the most chilling. If you hear the bell, do not look up. It seemed absurd, but the metallic clang of a distant bell echoed through the warehouse. He felt a deep, primal fear as he resisted the urge to glance upward, the sound growing increasingly urgent. Despite his resolve, he found his gaze drawn inexorably upward. The bell tolled again, louder and more insistent. His heart pounded as he caught glimpses of movement above dark, shifting forms that seemed to mock his defiance. The air grew colder with each chime. At 4 a.m. he felt an icy draft pass through him, carrying with it a sense of impending doom. The fifth rule suddenly made sense. Never turn your back on the door. The door to the office creaked open slowly, and he could feel an otherworldly presence slipping through the gap. He turned, and there was a figure cloaked in darkness, its face obscured by shadows. The rules seemed to come to life, embodying the horrors he had read about. The figure's gaze, though hidden, felt like 1,000 eyes boring into him, freezing him in place. The sixth rule warned, when the lights flicker, stay still. The power in the warehouse was unstable, and the lights began to strobe intermittently. Each flicker revealed glimpses of ghostly apparitions, their expressions contorted in eternal anguish. He tried to stay still, but terror made him tremble. The apparitions grew more distinct with each flicker, faces twisted in silent screams, their eyes pleading for release. He could feel their icy breath on his neck, each flicker revealing a new horror. The lights were his only respite, and their erratic blinking only heightened his dread. By 5 a.m. the seventh rule became crucial. never approach the old furnace. The furnace, a relic from a bygone era, stood ominously in the corner of the warehouse. A low, guttural growl emanated from within, promising suffering and despair to anyone who dared approach. Despite his best efforts to avoid it, the furnace seemed to call to him. Its were growing louder and more insistent. The ground seemed to vibrate beneath his feet, and the whispers from earlier returned, urging him closer to the malevolent source of the noise. The 8th rule was clear. Do not speak aloud after midnight. The silence was his only ally, but he found himself muttering the rules under his breath, seeking solace in their repetition. As the clock struck 12, his own voice seemed to awaken the very darkness he feared. The darkness responded with a cacophony of sinister sounds, scratching, growling, and hissing. It felt as though unseen entities were closing in, drawn to his spoken words. He could feel the oppressive weight of the night pressing down on him, and the darkness seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. The 9th rule was one of utmost importance. When the clock strikes 3, hide. The warehouse's ancient clock ticked toward the dreaded hour, and he searched frantically for a place to conceal himself. Every shadow seemed to harbor a lurking menace, and he had no choice but to find refuge. As the clock struck 3, he squeezed into a small storage closet. The sounds outside grew more intense, scraping, banging, and guttural cries. The walls seemed to close in, and he could feel the oppressive weight of the darkness pressing against him from all sides. The 10th and final rule was the most dire. If you see a figure in the mirror, it's too late. He dared not check his reflection, but a creeping dread made him glance at the cracked mirror hanging on the wall. There, behind him, stood a spectral figure, its eyes hollow and empty. The figure's presence was a death sentence. As he watched in horror, it began to move, its movements fluid and unnatural. The air grew colder, and a sense of finality settled over him. He had broken the rules, and now he was doomed to face the consequences. The figure's eyes locked onto his, and he felt an icy hand grip his heart. He was paralyzed by fear, unable to move or scream. The warehouse seemed to come alive with a sinister energy, closing in on him as the figure advanced with an otherworldly grace. The 11th rule, though not listed, became painfully clear. The night is never truly over. The hours dragged on, each moment stretching into an eternity. The warehouse was a realm of ceaseless terror, where time seemed to lose all meaning, and the darkness was relentless. The warehouse felt like a labyrinth of horror, with each turn revealing new terrors. The whispers were now a constant presence, their voices blending into a haunting chorus. Every corner seemed to hold a new nightmare, and there was no escape from the malevolent forces. By 6 a.m., the warehouse was no less menacing. The day's light struggled to penetrate the oppressive gloom. Shadows still lurked in the corners, and the sense of being watched never faded. The rules were a distant memory, overshadowed by the relentless terror of the night. As dawn approached, he clung to the hope that the nightmare would end. The rules seemed to mock him, their warnings now etched into his mind. The warehouse was a place of eternal darkness, and the rules were a grim reminder of the horrors that awaited those who dared to defy them. The final hours dragged on, and he could feel his sanity slipping away. The rules had been a desperate attempt to maintain order in a realm of chaos. Now they seemed like cruel taunts, reminding him of the futility of his efforts to escape the grasp of the darkness. The 12th rule, unspoken but felt, was, the darkness never truly leaves. As he staggered toward the exit, the horrors of the night clung to him like a shadow. The warehouse's malevolent presence had seeped into his soul, and there was no escape from the darkness within. The door finally creaked open, and he stepped into the cold light of dawn. The world outside seemed unchanged, but he was forever marked by the night. The rules had been his only guide through the horrors, but they had also been a cruel reminder of his inevitable fate. He tried to forget the night, to move on with his life, but the memories lingered. The warehouse's shadows seemed to follow him, and the whispers haunted his dreams. The rules had been a lifeline, but they had also been a curse, binding him to the darkness he had tried to escape. The 13th rule, an unspoken truth, was that once you become a night watchman, the darkness never truly lets you go. The experiences of that night were etched into his being, and the warehouse's malevolence had become a part of him. There was no escaping the terror that had claimed him. Years later, he would occasionally see a new ad for a night watchman position. The rules remained unchanged, a chilling reminder of the horrors that awaited those who dared to accept the job. He wondered if anyone would heed the warnings, or if they would, too, become trapped in the darkness. The cycle of terror continued, with each new night watchman facing the same sinister rules. The warehouse was a cursed place, its malevolent energy feeding on the fear of those who dared to enter. The rules were a grim testament to the horrors that awaited, and the darkness was always hungry. He became a cautionary tale, a warning to those who might be tempted. Until next time, thank you